All right, this is a wonderful slide. I think it's an outstanding slide, and it's probably a slide that you will see again. We're talking about Freud. We're talking about the psychosexual stages of development. And Freud says that there are 5 stages that we all go through that are psychosexually motivated. You will see this on the final. It's open. Can you get any more open book than that?
No.
Okay. The first stage is the oral stage. And the oral stage is important, sorry. The oral stage is important because Sigmund Freud says here it's where the personality becomes crystallized or established. When does this take place? First year of life.
Yeah.
All right, so if you want to do a little octagon or hexagon shape or something like that, the first stage is oral. So you want to write that. If you want to write that at the top, and then when is this oral phase established, and how is the oral phase? How does the child act out in the oral phase? They seek oral gratification. All right? All right, so check this out. What Sigmund Freud would say, let me break this down. What Sigmund Freud would say is, when you see someone that's always chewing on their hair, guys, we can't do that. Like, in this day and age, I guess with dreads and braids and all that stuff, I guess a guy could do that. But I remember being in elementary school, I would see some of my female students chewing on their hair. They would have like their hair in their mouth and they would be chewing on their hair. Mm-hmm. Or sucking on a pen. Sometimes you would see pens all chewed up at the end, or pencils. You're like, oh, yeah, right? Okay. And then yours truly, Professor Morgan, had a secret that he didn't let anybody know except for mom and dad and sis, and that was I couldn't go to sleep without sucking my thumb. I just couldn't. It was torture. All right? So Sigmund Freud would say Kobe Blair Morgan is orally fixated. And what the pediatrician told Mother Morgan and Father Morgan was Kobe was probably orally fixated in the womb. If you've ever seen a sonogram, some sonograms show the fetus, the boy or the girl, infant, actually sucking on their thumb.
Yes. I work with infants, and one of my kids sucks with their egg all the time.
Yes. Yes. And you know what's really like embarrassing? I didn't want to be one of these people. But what's really embarrassing is when you're on the bus or you're on the train station or taking a train or on the subway and you see an adult sucking their thumb or their fingers. Like a grown adult. Like you just want to go over and be like, ma'am, please. Stop it. Well, Sigmund Freud would say they are orally fixated because something took place in the first year of life. So here's probably how Professor Morgan is going to give you this question on the final. Kevin is 22 years old, and every now and then when he gets nervous, he begins to bite his fingernails. Sigmund Freud, if he was his counselor, would say, Kevin is fixated on what stage? Anal stage? Genital stage? Latency stage? You got it, right?
Yeah.
Okay. The next stage is the anal stage. And this begins to manifest itself. How you doing? This begins to manifest itself around the terrible twos. Mothers around that potty training stage and phase. And poopies and pee-pees become so important. Alright, now check this out. Some of us have friends or have even dated young men and young women that are fixated anally. And we would say either if they're obsessively neat and everything needs to be in order, we would say that they're anal retentive. Retentive means that you retain, contain, or remain within boundaries. Okay? Anally expulsive, when you're expulsive, you're messy, you're unorganized, you're all over the place. Okay. So an anal retentive person would be obsessively neat and orderly. Sigmund Freud would say the anal attentive adult was probably beaten, abused, verbally or physically, at their terrible 2s or 3s when they made poopies. And they became anally fixated as toddlers, and they began to process this cognitively, class, as it's not cool to make a messy poopy. Something's wrong with me if I make stink, if I make poopies. And so now you have a 37-year-old or a 42-year-old who's obsessively washing their hands. Or every hour they're putting on hand sanitizer. They're just so neat and orderly, and they get knocked off balance if something is out of place. That's probably because they had a mother or a father, an auntie or an uncle, or a primary caregiver that beat them into being anally retentive, or abused them into it, or mandated that they're so organized and neat. Make sense?
Yes.
And then if they're anally expulsive, if one is messy and organized, oftentimes what Sigmund Freud would say is that would come from that behavior would be fixated at that age if the child was in an environment where there were no boundaries, where there was no structure, just mom and dad and siblings and the home culture and school culture. It was just everybody was just all over the place. Make sense? You ate whatever you wanted to eat. Where are you going? Hurry. All right. Where was I at? Sorry, friends.
No boundaries.
Yes, no boundaries. So when you see somebody that's very messy and disorganized, and they have no structure or discipline to their lives, their notes are messy, their room's messy, they dress messy, there are no boundaries. They're 300 pounds overweight, they eat whatever they want, when they want, how they want. There are no boundaries, there's no structure. Oftentimes that's a sign that structure and neatness, directly or indirectly, was communicated to them at their very early ages, that it's not cool to be structured and organized. Make sense? And it doesn't mean that auntie, uncle, mom, or dad says to little Jasmine, it's not good to be organized and structured and neat and disciplined. We're not saying that. What we're saying is the house communicates that. You guys get that?
Yes.
The lifestyle and the culture at home communicates it's okay to be messy. It's okay to be sloppy. It's okay to eat whatever you want. It's okay to go to bed with a box of Oreo cookies in your bed with you while you're watching television. With Oreo chips, with Dorito chips and ice cream. It's okay to eat in the bed and have crumbs all in the bed. Mom and dad never said it's okay to be nasty. But they're living that way, without boundaries. You guys get that?
Yes.
All right. So, Daphne, so that you get this, Sigmund Freud says that there are 5 psychosexual stages that kids go through. And our adult life is manifested by where that trauma took place in our developmental level. Remember? We talked about that last week. We are emotionally retarded or stunted at the place of our first catastrophe, trauma, or crises. Make sense? So ladies, if you're dating a 30-something or a 20-something-year-old man and you all get into a confrontation or a combative issue, and all of a sudden he starts to act like he's 10, that's because something happened at 10. And it doesn't have to be that, you know, he was abducted and flown over to Sri Lanka and his dad went over there and, you know, found him like, you know, Liam Neeson and Taken. I mean, it doesn't have to be that extreme. It just means that something happened during the developmental stages at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, or 13. When you see a grown adult revert, ego defense mechanisms, regression, when we see them go back to an earlier state. Okay? All right. So we've got the oral stage. That takes place during the first year of life. The reason why I'm going back is I wanted Daphne to actually speak to this a little bit because she works at a daycare center, or early childhood development center, and we were talking about during the first year of life, we see kids throwing everything and anything in their mouths. If you have a toddler or an infant, you're constantly saying, "No, put that down. Yes. Put that down." You constantly have to be mindful of what's going in their mouth. So Sigmund Freud says this is the first stage, and it's the oral stage. Interestingly enough, Sigmund Freud called it the oral stage because the kids are not trying to put stuff in their armpit. They're not. When have you seen a 1 or 2 year old take a car or a rock and hide it here? So he doesn't call it the armpit stage. He calls it the oral stage. Make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Okay. The second stage is the anal stage. And that's during the terrible 2s and 3s, that pre-K toddler age, well not pre-K, but toddler age when making poopies and potty training becomes so important. This is why it's so important that parents are emotionally healthy and stable. It's okay that your child makes nasty, stinky poopies. If you beat them and you make them feel bad because they're making stinky poopies, then Sigmund Freud would say they are going to grow up as anal retentive adults. Stuck. Because it wasn't okay to make poopies. So I have to hold everything. Anal retentive. You retain. Not good. It's okay. It's okay. The phallic stage. The phallic stage represents what? What does Sigmund Freud mean by the phallic stage? I hear mumbling. Can somebody raise their hand and state what he means by the...
Is that when it, like the Oedipus?
Are you asking me or telling me? I need somebody to tell me.
It's when the boy like wants to marry the mommy.
Okay, why does Sigmund Freud call it the phallic stage? What does he mean by phallic stage? Stephanie, what were you going to say? Were you going to break down the phallic stage? Are you guys reading your books? Reading your chapters? But then you guys want me to do open book on the midterm so that you can read it for the first time on the midterm?
Well, in the book they give an example when the boy sees a naked girl. The little boy sees a naked girl.
You guys are right on with the examples. You guys are giving me examples of what takes place during the stage. My question is, what's a phallic symbol? Why does Sigmund Freud call it a phallic? Huh? Are you asking or telling me? Wait a minute, you're not supposed to ask a question. When you're being asked a question, can somebody please help the professor?